guys, welcome to episode 12. I'm so excited to have amazing people to have this conversation with today. I have Vidya in the house and I have Colin in the house. Vidya, what's up?
Hey girl, happy to be in your podcast finally.
Oh my gosh, yes, I know it's been a long wait, and here you are in the flesh or in the voice, right? This is exciting. And Colin, what's up? How's it going?
Michelle, I am so excited to be on this podcast. I've been listening since the first episode and been loving it, and I'm really excited to be participating today.
Wow, I'm just really honored to have you both, and thank you for the support you've shown the podcast through listening and feedback and all of that stuff. And today, people get to hear your guys' voices on such a really big topic, right? And guys, in the last episode that I did with Nyasha, which was about getting back together with the ex, I did talk about how we're going to be having some of these more real conversations that are a lot deeper. So today's conversation is going to be about breakups. And in particular, we're going to be talking about dealing with or coping with a breakup. And something that I want to say before we get started is that every breakup is different, right? And even how people deal with breakups will be different. Some people, have a method that works for them, and some people have a different method, but it works for them. So we're just here to share either through our own experiences, like what we've learned, or what we've learned through friends' experiences, what has helped for us or what has helped for our friends. And the whole point again is to help somebody out there who might be going through a tough time, with a breakup. So to kick us off, let's hear from Colin. Colin, what are breakup stages that come to your mind?
Thanks, Michelle. But before I get started on that, I just wanted to quick say that I know that for a lot of the listeners out there that, this may not be the happy type of subject, but I personally think it's a very important one because I think if you don't do it right, you can really get yourself in a painful place. And I think it's a meaningful conversation to have to do breakups right. And so to answer your question, when it comes to breakup stage, the breakup stages, everyone has like a different kind of listen order. But they all tend to follow the same pattern. And I kind of view it as like a series of 5 to 7 steps. So first would be the realization or the shock, the news, so to speak. This is like whether you realize like it's time to break up with the other person, or you've heard it from them that they want to break up. That's kind of like the first step of this. And then you would move to kind of like a denial negotiation type stage where you're kind of, doubting in your head that this is true. You're not really believing, what's happening. You couldn't really foresee this happening, and you're kind of negotiating like, is this reality? Is this just a dream? And you go back and forth in your head over this. Then you kind of move to the next stage, which is like anger. So then you get really furious at the other person, like, how dare you, mistreat me? How dare you, take my heart and crush it like that? And you get, you're really tempted to just really like hurt them for, hurting you. But once your anger cools down, you kind of enter a stage of like sadness, grief. You kind of realize like, okay, this thing's about to be over and I need to sit here and really reflect on what's going on. And this stage can be pretty painful because you're, sitting there, thinking about all the good memories, the bad stuff, and you're going through this process emotionally of trying to work everything out and make sense of everything, and it can be a long and painful process. But the next step of this, which is to kind of help you get out of this, is hopefully support. Will be kind of like the next stage where you seek support from others, friends, family, therapists. Supporting yourself. Search for answers online. Basically search for support anywhere you can to help yourself, move on from this. And then you get to the next stage, which is like acceptance, which is really the ultimately where you want to get to out of this sadness stage, where you finally accept that, okay, this is over. I feel at peace with the decision, and I feel at peace with moving on from this. And then finally you would move into the last stage, which is like basically recovery. You've accepted that this has happened, and now you can recover emotionally, recover your life, recover your dignity and self-worth, and really move on. And throughout these breakup stages, people are going to move at different paces and whatnot, but essentially these are the stages that people essentially follow through.
Yo, that was so deep and so real, because even as you were going through it, I'm having flashbacks of breakups. Oh, wow. It's a bit heavy. I think it's really good for us to break down each of these stages and like talk more about them, right? So the first stage that you mentioned, which I want us to talk about, is the realization part, slash I guess the shock part. And I think something that you said that really resonated with me is that it's not just a realization from one end. So like the person who has been broken up with, right? So let's say someone breaks up with me. That's one way of me being like, oh my gosh, like this person just broke up with me. And now I'm coming to a realization or shock that this is happening. But even think about it from the other side, where like someone who was in the relationship thinks like, okay, based on whatever reasons that they have, they think that this thing is coming to an end. That's also a part of their process, even though they're the one who's breaking up with someone. So both parties have to come to a realization of what's going on, but it looks different on both ends. Very, very interesting. Vidya, any thoughts on that first stage?
Before getting into that, I also wanted to echo Colin's sentiment on how important this topic is and how it's a very real human experience. And thank you, Michelle, for talking through this and having it as an episode to begin with. Um, all right, coming back to your question. So yeah, I think realization. The thing is, sometimes you have to play catch up. Like one person realizes the cracks first because they're probably the one taking the heat or something, and then the other one sort of maybe tries to patch the crack, or like playing catch up to that realization and shock. I feel balancing that is also tough, like especially if you're a person, you're the one who wants to keep the relationship, but you already know there are cracks all over. um but like Colin said, like at the end you have to honor your dignity, self-worth, and really think about how it's going to look like for the both of you, not just one person. And when you're in love, you see each other in a relationship. I think the view of seeing each other as a team is really important. And if it's not working for the team, I think getting through the realization with grace is actually going to be very meaningful in life.
I think that something that's pretty hard to deal with is the fact that assuming that this is not a breakup that just happened in the heat of an argument, right? Like it happened in like it wasn't a well thought out decision. No, I'm talking about like a rational, well thought out breakup. What happens is that the person who breaks up with the other person comes to the realization. And, it's one of those things where, let's say, when something ends, you hear someone say, oh, like, I actually started having thoughts about this 2 months ago, or I started having thoughts about this a month ago, or I started having thoughts about it like 2 weeks ago, right? So it
Oh,
can be
that's a
really.
dagger right in the heart, girl. You say it that way,
Yes,
but yes.
yes, yes, right. Because then there's a whole lot. It's not just the shock, first of all, of that this breakup is coming out of nowhere. It's also the fact that you are now saying, oh my gosh, like, how did I not realize these past whatever 2 months or month that this person was over this relationship, right? So it's also just like the shock of this came out of nowhere, and the shock of like, how did this person not tell me this whole time, and the shock of how was I not able to pick up, right? And I think that throughout trying to get through like the ending of a relationship or trying to get through a breakup, you have to especially, and I'm talking from the end of, the person who's been broken up with, there are going to be so many questions in your head, right? Where, like, honestly, if you could ask this person so many questions, you would not run out of questions to ask. So I think a part of going through a breakup is also just being okay to a certain extent with like what someone says, which is really, really hard to say. So in this case, and again, we're focusing on the realization stage. Let's say someone breaks up with me and says, "Hey, I've been thinking about this for this whole month, and I've come to a decision that like we need to come to the end of the relationship," right? I I can ask that person, okay, can you explain to me what triggered this whole thought process to start off with? And they're gonna say whatever they say, but I have to just accept the fact that like this person did take a month to think about it and they've come to this decision. So I think also the realization sometimes that like, okay, this person has really thought this through and there's no way that I can say something. Sometimes there's no way that you can say something to change that decision just because the person has thought about it over a long period of time. But yeah, Colin, any thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of different ways that this realization could take place, right? I mean, you presented an example where someone has been thinking about it kind of in the background for a month or two or whatever, and then they're bringing this news to the other person like, "Hey, announcement, I want to break up." But it also could happen like where the person's a bit more upfront about it and they're like maybe a bit more open about the problems, and it ends up being more of a mutual kind of thought process where someone might initially bring it up, but they're not initially bringing it up with the news like I'm done. They're bringing it up
Mm-hmm.
like with I'm having some issues and I think we need to explore what our future is. And so like over the course of maybe a month or two or whatever, the couple kind of together makes this realization. And so that is a
Mm-hmm.
another way and sometimes a better way to get to this stage because it takes away that shock from both parties and
Mm-hmm.
provides more of a gentler sort of transition into the breakup.
Wow, yeah, I really love that. Yeah, that just thinking about it from like sometimes you do discuss issues and then you say, okay, let's wait it out a little bit, right? And try fix it. And then, after the period of time you've given it, you're like, okay, this is really not working. And so both parties come to that agreement at the same time. And like you said, I think it eases the shock aspect of it. Um, yeah, wow, very, very deep.
I think that's a sign of a good relationship and solid communication too. So if someone can get through that and still say, you know what, this is not working anymore, I think that helps to get through the other stages at a much healthier and faster rate.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely like easing through the shock. It says a lot about the two people involved in it if they can actually do that, instead of going down the path of, oh, is it me, or is it my self-worth? You're questioning all these things sometimes when, I mean, when your heart is broken, you're like at a very vulnerable place. Like sometimes what you do, what you think won't make sense in, when the playing field is level. So yeah, I just wanted to say that if you can do that and ease the shock, it says a lot about the two people involved, and it will ease the process of the next stages to come.
Really, really solid there. Okay, so let's go into this denial stage slash, like negotiation. I guess we'll make things a bit lighter. So I went through a breakup and it shook me. I was shocked. It came out of nowhere, left field, bam, like, got hit by another car. But like that's how it felt. Okay. And when I tell you denial is real, in my head, obviously I never did this, but in my head, I saw myself holding a whole boombox in the rain, singing, just singing and being like, oh my gosh, don't do this to me. Like, oh, no, 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 we can make it work and that kind of stuff. Like denial. I mean, of course, like I said, I'm trying to keep things light in this particular part here. But like, yeah, I mean, it just goes to say, like, your mind can go very far while you're going through a breakup, right? Of course, I just again for me, I just thought about I never did it, and I wouldn't execute something like that. But it is part of that whole thing of like, man, like I don't want to accept this. I don't think that this is right, you know. But of course, I mean, the relationship did have to end, which was unfortunate. But there was still denial, and as much as certain things were logical, it was like, yeah, like it's really hard for me to just accept it right now. Let's hear more from you, Vid, about this denial slash negotiation.
It is real. I echo what you said. It's like all that crazy song singing, and then you're feeling all these breakup songs. You come up with playlists. You're like, this was us. How did we get here? Yeah, and rereading text, and you're like, it was real. It wasn't in my head. Yeah, I mean, I totally get that, and it is tough. Just I think adjusting to not having your person anymore, and accepting that fact, it takes a lot out of you. And I think it comes in waves for me, I feel like. So like one day I'm like, yes, this is it, and then I'm like, okay, I took 4 steps forward, and then another day I'm like, oh, I'm a mess. I feel like I'm back in this relationship in my head, but oh wait, I'm not. So it comes in waves, I feel like.
Yeah, so I think yes, it's real, but I think that a lot of people may not necessarily be in denial per se. A lot of people might initially, okay, they realize that it's true what's going on, but instead they go through more this the negotiation side of this, where they're going back and forth in their head over is this really happening to me? Is am I actually is this going to hurt me? Am I going to be better off? Why did they do these things to me? Why did I do this to them? You go through all these, you start rattling in your head over all these different facts and memories, and it can be a little overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So some people may not necessarily be in denial, right? Even though a lot of people certainly are, because one day you woke up and you were in love and in a relationship, and then a few days later you wake up and you're not, and it just feels like how did this happen so suddenly? And so for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, the denial is real, and I think it's actually kind of a real thing that happens in our brains, where our brains do this because it allows us to transition. It gives our minds and our bodies like time to like transition from one state to the next. So it's definitely a normal thing that people go through in a breakup process, because it gives your mind and your body time to transition.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like what you said. It's a very interesting thing because while like, like you said, Colin, right? Like we could list out the stages that you go through in a breakup, but I almost feel like some of these stages happen at the same time. Like you can be in denial and sadness at the same time, and anger, like, so like
Oh, absolutely.
in one day, actually, you could go through like, you could feel like you went through the whole cycle except for recovery. And then the next day, it's like, oh my gosh, no, I'm still like in step 2 of this whole thing. And again, I'm like back in denial. But I think that with certain mechanisms or certain things that you can try to do, right? For example, one thing that we would talk more about later when we talk about tips and of going through this stuff is, I think when you reduce communication with someone, it can help that loop of like denial where you're like, did this really happen? I don't know. I can't take, because for example, if I'm to break up with someone today and the next day we're already transition into we're talking every day, I feel like I would never get to like that realization point of, okay, this thing actually ended, right? So for me, if like we have a break
Hmm.
in communication, then I'm able to like go through these loops of emotions and all of that stuff alone, and then come to realize that like, yeah, I have a break in the routine that I had. Like every day I used to talk to this person, but I don't talk to this person every day, right? So maybe, the first goal is to just get through one day without talking to him. And then if I do that, I'm like, okay, I can get through like, the second day, and then, a week. And then I think over time, I think time heals things. If as long as you're like processing the emotions as you're going through them, time heals things to where it won't feel like you have to talk to this person all the time.
Yes, I feel like it's kind of a balancing act. On one
Hmm.
hand, you want that contact or communication with the other,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to get answers
Right.
to your questions, because that'll prevent you from doing excessive negotiating in your head,
Mm-hmm.
or living in this alternative reality, making up explanations for things. So you want
Mm-hmm.
that connection at the very start of it to get those answers. But then as
Mm-hmm.
time goes on, you do want that time apart to allow yourself to transition at your own pace peacefully. So you kind of need both
That's
to
true.
get through this stage.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. And I think that it was interesting for me um with one breakup that I had where it was like, okay, the breakup happened today, right? And obviously I'm just hit by this news and I'm in shock. Um and in I guess when things are happening, right? Sometimes, especially when it comes as such a shock, it's hard to get all your questions out. So in that moment, I actually didn't have any questions. But then to Colin's point, yeah, I had a bunch of questions the next day after I had sat with it, cried with it. Then now I had my questions. I'm like, hey, like, can we get on a call? Because I just have a bunch of questions that I needed to ask. So yeah, so I definitely agree that like, yeah, before you say that, okay, I'm cutting communication totally, you still want to get all your questions answered. But I think it was also interesting that in as much as I asked questions, right? Let's say, like I wrote down all the questions that I had and I asked questions and I got answers to all the questions that I had. There was still maybe like for that day, I accepted the answers. But then, maybe like 3 days later, my mind was just like, are you really just going to accept these answers? And then in addition to that, I had more questions. So like my mind just kept on generating questions to where I was like, it's for me personally, it just wasn't healthy to just keep trying to, because sometimes you get an answer that's not satisfactory, right? But then it also just could be that you are like it's you are denying something that's very real to somebody else. And if someone has already told you maybe like once or in two different ways, like reasons for certain things, no matter how many times you ask questions or how many different angles you ask the same questions from, you're still going to get the same answer. So at some point I was just like, okay, you know what, these questions that I had, like the main ones are out the quest the I've gotten answers to the main ones, and now all these ones that keep creeping up, I just have to just find a way to not dwell on the questions, right? Because again, you don't want to keep having a whole negotiation in your head where you're looping different questions and you keep having more questions and just going crazy. So I think that's where for me, finding things to distract me from just being in my thoughts helped. But again, at some point I do think that it was helpful for me to just like, hey, let me cut communication. And here's the thing, I don't think that cutting communication means cutting communication for the rest of your lives. Sometimes cutting communication just means like, I need to cut communication for like a month and a half where I don't talk to this person. But then, maybe a month and a half from now, like if we have messages here and there, it's not a bad thing, right? But at least I had the break in communication and I was able to like process some of my feelings. Vid, any thoughts there?
Yeah, actually, a lot of thoughts. I love what both of you said. Yeah, I mean, I can relate to pretty much everything both of you said, and that I think that balance that Colin talked about is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Just coming from a standpoint of so what I was thinking is actually when Colin started talking at first, I'm like negotiating. Yes, I'm at a. I mean, most of us are in an analytical job where like there's always some solution somewhere. My brain works that way. There's always somewhere to make it work. If you tweak this, tweak that, the data, the
Yes.
solution will do what you want it to do. So I think I'm kind of ingrained to think that way in like more recent years of of my adult years. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard to let go because I'm like, what if I did this? What if I did that? What if the person did this? So I
Right.
go through yeah all these scenarios and like maybe it will work, but that takes a lot of mental energy out of you, and it's actually pretty detrimental too. But it just got me thinking like, why do I negotiate that much? Why do I spend that much time? And so having that balance is important too, because I feel like, yeah, go out there, ask these questions, and I think as guiding points, I mean, it's going to look different for everyone, but guiding points to like sort of save yourself out of this heartbreak would probably be like, get a true answer to why it ended. And as hard as it's going to be to hear it, or the person giving it, like, be honest. Like, honesty is going to, propel you like further down this journey, like, I mean, further up this journey, I mean, in a good way. um
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, not like down, yeah, you know what I mean.
Not downhill,
So
right? It will propel you
yeah.
further.
It will help you. Honesty is important. And then, so like, why did that happen? And if any of the reasons like touch your self-worth, and you're like, I don't know how to go on with my life anymore, I don't know who I am anymore, like identity crisis. I think I sort of felt that during one of my breakups. It's sort of like, who am I right now? Like, like, this is tough. Like, so also like accepting that there are pieces of this person that you've learned and grown with, and acknowledging that and being okay with that, I think it's a powerful thing, because you don't want to completely get rid of this episode in your life either, in an effort to get through the breakup. So I think finding that balancing ground is important. So ask your big questions, like why, and if it's affecting you from moving forward, to hold yourself together, like ask those questions to make peace with. It's not you, it's not anything to, take a ding on your self-worth. And then take have space apart. Like, that's where you build strength with the information you already have, and stop trying to draw tree branches to find out solution, because there is no solution. It's just letting go at this point.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, that was so deep. And I really like how you talked about being honest, because I think, in both ends, let's say you're the one who is, going to break up with someone, be honest, right? Be honest with like the real reasons why the breakup is happening. And let's say you're the one who's just been broken up with. I think you should be very honest too with how this person has made you feel. Because I think sometimes, um, if you don't tell the person who is actually inflicting this pain on you exactly how you feel, right? You might go and you might tell your friends exactly how you feel about the situation, but like telling other people versus telling the person who actually did this to you, to me, those are two very different things. So I like to be very honest with my emotions. So like if I'm hurt, like just saying, I'm really hurt and I'm really struggling with this or blah, blah, blah. I think honesty in any case will just help you move forward, you know. Um I don't like the whole thing of bottling emotions or like bottling thoughts, let those out. Even for health reasons, I think it's just good to let feelings and let thoughts out. Anything else on this denial negotiation, or should we go to anger?
Anger.
Oh.
This is the fun stage to talk about. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. This is actually, of all the stages, this is the most serious, right? I mean, anger is a real emotion that everyone feels, right? But if it's not controlled, like, there is some risks or some danger here. If when someone hurts you or you feel hurt, and you feel angry at them, there's definitely a temptation to hurt them back, and you must do your best when you're in the stage to resist that temptation and control yourself and try to tone it down. Find ways to release your anger that do not involve taking it out on the other person, because you will regret it. And if you are in a situation where, okay, you feel you've controlled yourself, but you feel that the other person is not controlling themselves with their anger, you must do everything you can to protect yourself and remove yourself from any risk of them doing something harmful to you. The reason I say all this is because there are real risks in the world where people go through breakups, and you see this thing blow up because people are angry and they don't control it. It's there's a lot of serious consequences to that, and I can't stress it enough that when you're in this stage, you must do your best to control yourself. Find healthy ways to release it. Punch a pillow, talk to a therapist, go inside your bedroom and scream a few times if you need to. Just do something that does not involve actually harming someone else.
Oh, yeah. I think that was really deep. I think I also really like what you said about how maybe you have become the subject of somebody else's anger. You have to look out for yourself and remove yourself from, that situation. So let's say, for example, you were the one who had to break up with someone, and your ex is really not handling this well, and they're so angry, they might even be threatening your life. They might be showing up, slashing your tires, or just you know, different things that are just making you not feel safe, right? I think it is important to just, if you have to move from the apartment where you were at, right? Because some people are crazy out there, I'm not going to lie. If you have to move from the apartment that you're at so that this person won't know where you live, then do that. Because in the end, you know, like Vidya said, right? Breakups are a real part of life, but it's not a reason to lose your life over. So if you really feel like a relationship had to end, then no one should really force you to be in a relationship with them through like using force or anything like that. So really, really like that point, Colin.
Yeah, and it comes in different degrees, right? Like it doesn't have to mean, yes, we were talking about this degree of it could be something life threatening, but it could be at a much smaller scale than that. It could just be, someone just wants to give you a nice, smack across the face like Will Smith did.
Oh
You
my
know,
God.
just pulling off of recent examples. Like when you get angry, sometimes you just want to give a person a smack in the face. You have to try to resist that urge because there will be consequences. That I'm sure Will Smith can attest to the fact that there are consequences to what he just did. Save yourself the cleanup and just try to control your anger and release it in healthier ways.
And I think also some people are not physical, but they use certain words, right? Like verbal abuse. And you should never be in a position where someone calls you to, it's okay for someone to call you to ask for closure, but you don't have to stick around if someone is like calling you out of your name and like shouting at you over the phone or anything like that. Vid, let's hear about anger. You're such a sweet person. Like I can't imagine anger on you.
I was just gonna say this phase, I mean this stage is tough for me because I don't think I feel this stage. Probably I straight go to like sadness or grief, but I will bring one perspective of anger. I don't think I get angry at the other person, but I have felt anger towards myself, more like why did I
Wow.
put myself through that? Why
Hmm.
did I give this person like so much mental power over me that it can break me, make me, break my day, make my day? So I have felt like anger on my own self for that reason,
Hmm.
and there are ways to like cope with that to make peace. But when that's not taken care of or like cope with well, I think it manifests with like anxiety, panic attacks. You're just like, I can't move here, I can't move there. I just hate myself for doing that. I think that's a loop to be mindful of at the same time. As much as you can be angry at the other person, I think anger to itself is also very detrimental, and save your cleanup time and all of that by paying attention to early signs that okay, I'm unable to process this. Sometimes when you're angry at yourself, you just can't look past or look at what made you angry. It's hard to look at that side of you. It's hard to look at yourself in the mirror sometimes. I think self anger can be like a whole other topic, but yeah, I wanted
Mm.
to bring that element there for sure, and coping with that and finding strength, and the learning the art of letting go is gonna help there too.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a deep like a really deep point. I think that what Vidya said is really important, that you have to find means, whether it's going to be like talking to a therapist or talking to friends, to release that anger towards yourself. Because sometimes all you need is for people to tell you that no, like you didn't make a mistake being in a relationship with this person. Like while you guys were together, things were good. It's just unfortunate that like, this is how he decided to move after the relationship ended. So yeah, I think having conversations with people also helps with letting go off of that self anger. But really, really good point, Vid. I like that.
Telling yourself I forgive you, but to yourself is a very powerful thing to do as well. And somehow that transcends pain sometimes.
Oh, wow. Okay, sounds like some affirmations. Would you be looking at yourself in the mirror?
No, that's a little I mean, people are different. You could do that. I write a lot, so I would write it down and look at the words. So that helps me just to see those words like I forgive you, I forgive myself, and it's okay. Like those words really help me. So I write it down. That's my way.
I love that. Okay, I really like that. Thanks for sharing your tip there. Let's go into sadness, grief, reflection. Okay. In this stage, guys, man, I mean, I think the top thing that comes to mind is crying. Crying. Oh my gosh. Like, it's so therapeutic. And here's the thing, if there are any, I feel like girls cry, are more likely to be the ones who cry, after something ends. I don't know if all guys cry after something ends, but I will encourage any guy who's going through a breakup, who's hurting, to cry. Like, it's okay for men to cry because crying helps you release, like, it's like, I don't know if you guys ever feel this, but like, if you're so angry or if you're so sad and then you cry, it's almost like something gets released. I don't know if there's a medical term for this, but you feel better for, like, at least like that day after you've cried, like you might feel a bit better than if you didn't cry. So I would say my top word under sadness and grief is crying.
For me, this sadness grief stage, to me, this is out of all the stages, it's probably the longest,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you probably spend the most time in this stage during the breakup, and like you said, I think everyone kind of expresses their sadness differently. For a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, it is crying and venting and those kind of things. But for a lot of people, they kind of express their grief in different ways. It could just be you're just in this, very like low mood state where you're just kind of like slouching on the couch all the time, or you have your
Mm.
head kind of hang low when you're walking to work. And this stage could go on for several weeks where you're just in this low mood. There could be
Mm-hmm.
some crying sprinkled in there. There could be some, you know, uh, other types of emotions sprinkled in there. But I think the overarching word for me is a low mood. And the other word, the other like um, buzzword in this stage for me would really be reflection. And that's really, I think, the more positive side of the stage. I think the reason why your mood is low, you're crying or whatever, is because you're going through this period of reflection,
Mm-hmm.
reflecting on like you know your relationship with this person, what you went through together, the issues you had together, trying to make sense of those issues, making sense of why you broke up, trying to understand your issues, theirs, and really trying to get at the root cause of the problems. And that's a painful process.
Mm-hmm.
This reflection process is very painful, and that's often what leads to you know the low mood. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's kind of it's this like dual sort of um words going on of reflection and low mood.
I like that. Yeah. I think that's very good that you pointed out that, yeah, people deal with grief in different ways. And just as you were talking about it, I think something that can happen too is that sometimes you lose your appetite, right? Like you can't eat. Sometimes people lose sleep, like they can't sleep anymore. So I think it's really important while you're going through like sadness and grief to, and I guess this is now kind of going a little bit into the next stage, but like to have people who support you, because just anything that you can do, even to just get out of the house. If you have a friend or like family member who you can hang out with, who takes your mind off of things, at least you get to like be outside and have something distract you for a few hours, right? Because it's not good to just be alone in the apartment or in your house with like all the shades closed and stuff, because like we said, right, like breakups are a part of life, and they, unfortunately, is they will happen, right, to people, and life unfortunately has to move on, and you don't want to be in a situation where you've had a breakup and now, the sadness and grief has taken you to such a low point that you have actually like, now you have like health issues. Like a lot of health issues can just result from this. So I think it is really important in this stage, especially, to take care of yourself.
Yeah, I absolutely second that. I think that a lot of people, they're really afraid of this part of the process
Hmm.
because it's so painful. They're afraid to confront the pain. They're afraid to confront the reality, and they'll do whatever. A lot of people will not really take the time to go through this emotional reflection and processing, and a lot of them will avoid it or
Hmm.
numb it and develop some bad habits like excessive partying or
Hmm.
drinking or drugs, because they're trying to avoid confronting this reality of the breakup. And I think it's so important, in my opinion, that you actually need to process it. You actually need to go through the process of reflecting and thinking and emotionally trying to, work through everything, because otherwise you'll never move on from this state. Now, of course,
Yeah.
everyone will go at their own pace, right? Like you can't just like do it all in one day so
Hmm.
intensely. Some people might need a week, some people might need a month, some people might need a year.
Hmm.
But it's important that like you are actively like trying to work through it. And maybe like it's like one day, you spend a couple hours thinking about it, and then you're like, okay, I'm done for the day thinking about it. I need to go take a break and hang out with my friends, and I'll think about it tomorrow if I feel like it.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
do what you need to do to work through it, or else you will never truly move on from this state.
Yeah. And I don't want to go too deep into this because it's probably been something already in another episode about this. But um, in this stage, you also have to be very careful, because in trying to avoid dealing with your pain, this is where I feel like you get into situationships or you find a rebound relationship, right? Because there's someone, because it's not just things that can make you feel good. Like, let's say, for example, you start drinking and drinking just, is your escape. Sometimes it's like a person, right? And you don't want, even if there was someone who has interest in you prior to you, getting out of the relationship or whatever, you never want to automatically move from one relationship to another without dealing with stuff. So I think, yeah, just also be careful that you don't use other people or relationships, romantic relationships, as your way of escape in this stage. Because it not only hurts you by not processing, it also hurts the other person, because at some point, the breakup that you went through will hit you. And then at that point, that's when you might call things off with this person who really didn't need to be looped into, like, this whole breakup cycle.
Oh yeah, that is super painful. Actually, a question too. So I think for me, right, I'm just thinking like realistically what this looks like or looked like is just being detached from my reality, unable to feel joy in any way and form. If, for example, if I enjoy singing, dancing, or like hanging out with friends, now all of that just makes me numb, or I don't feel the joy that it used to bring me, just not feeling, allowing any positive emotions in. Like pain is the one that sort of overwhelms and takes over. And like you said, sometimes it will show in your body, like acne breakout, or you'll lose ton of weight, and it will show in your body if that's not taken care. So I think there's certain balance between sadness and grief and support. I think both of them have to work symbiotically to sort of help each other, because like Colin said, reflection is very important here. So while you're
Hmm.
feeling low and detached from yourself, I think it's important to sort of remind yourself, okay, this is who I used to be. I find joy in this ways. I find strength in doing meeting friends, doing some activities out there. I think reminding yourself of your hobbies and stuff like that will be very helpful. But it's trying to kind of make you meet you, if that makes sense. It's like teaching yourself to learn to live again, because sadness and grief will take you through a whole wave of just being so detached and unable to feel joy. That's what it looked like for me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, crying. I think crying is very, very soothing. Like I sometimes just go through it, cry, and then I'll be able to sleep. And the
Mm-hmm.
times where I'm harboring all these emotions, when it's tough for it to pass through, like I'll try to write. Like again, it helps me to see things in words. And sometimes just reading what other people wrote, it's also helpful just to kind of
Mm.
know that someone else felt this pain. This pain was is real. It's not just for me. I think there's something empowering in that aspect too. So I think it sort of has to exist with something else. One drowns you and the other one needs to lift you up so you can
Mm.
get through it together, I feel like.
Oh wow, I really love that. And like so to what you're saying, Vid, the I guess sitting with your emotions part is I guess what could bring you super low, but then having support could be uplifting you, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have a question to Colin, if I may ask. Just curious as you were talking, like what does men's like sadness, grief look like? If you have a story or just overall thoughts, like is it different from women or like is sadness universal for both of us?
So actually, we put on a really good act, and we never cry in front of you. But when we're alone, we lock ourselves in a room and we'll cry it all out in 24 hours, and then we come out and we're magically all better. No, I'm kidding. That's definitely not how it goes.
I actually
Um,
believed you, Colin. I was like, oh wow.
so
I was
it,
like, that can't be right. Okay.
yeah, we're not
So
we're men are
gullible.
I don't sorry, men are not that talented. We can't do that. But I'd say it's really different. I'd say for every individual male, but I would say that if a man is not really a crier, they're probably going to express sadness more through you know their lack of initiative, their lack of care towards doing things, their lack of you know energy or positivity towards things. They're just going to express it through these like low mood type of signals where they're just not, they just can't be their full selves. They can't bring their full selves to the situation anymore. They just have this low energy, low mood. There's a lot of different signals for that. um, and for a lot of men, this sadness state can be you know expressed through different types of activities, like maybe they're developing some bad habits, like they're drinking or things like that. But I'd say for the most part, I'd say men are expressing sadness through just having this low energy, low mood, kind of withdrawing themselves from you know the situation and trying to retract themselves and inward.
Oh
Wow, thanks
wow.
for sharing. Yeah, let's go into support a little bit. So I think some things that came up in conversation already were, talking to therapists, talking to friends and family, because these are people who can help you. I guess if it's friends and family, you can have people to do activities with, people to kind of bring breaks to your days, so that you're not just stuck in your thoughts. I'm curious if any one of you has insights to share about, like, say the therapy part of it, because I think a lot of people have never been to a therapist because there's just a fear of, okay, if I go to a therapist, what if they dig so deep into me that it leaves me uncomfortable, it leaves me worse off. So I guess in terms of breakups and therapy, do you guys know what kind of questions therapists would ask, or how they could help someone going through a breakup? Is it that they prescribe things that you should do? Is it that they just check on your progress? Like, what exactly do therapists do in this stage for you?
Yeah, I have some insights there. So I did speak to a therapist when things were hard, especially during the pandemic. Like it's just tough to. This was the start of the pandemic, so it's tough to have that same support system with friends and family. So, um, I did speak to a therapist, and it was very helpful. It felt like a very overarching problem before going to therapist. Kind of felt like, oh my god, I have this see a therapist. Like, where am I in life right now? Like, what brought me here? But when I started talking to someone, it just felt like a friend that you're paying and gives you your full attention, full, like, no interruption. This person will keep up with your progress. It's just like this person who will do it in a very professional way. And honestly, I think they ask things. They'll meet you where you are, so it's not like they have like a template or whatever. It's different, and they will adapt to those styles. If you're the kind of person who needs more techniques, like, say for example, if you're having panic attacks or you're unable to, if physically, like, your stress is showing, yeah, then they'll prescribe stuff that way. When I say prescribe, I mean like techniques to cope. But if you're someone who's reflecting, they will kind of like give you that additional push you need, like, let your thinking muscle do its work, but they'll just make sure your thinking muscle keeps going. Like, if at any point you're emotional and you want to get through these tough emotions, then they'll sort of have guiding questions. So I think
Mhm.
it's kind of tough for the therapist to dig really deep if you don't allow them to. So if you give them problem A, and they'll just like it's kind of like a river or wave after that, and they will assure you that it's okay to feel a certain way. It's actually very empowering, and the goal of a really good therapist is to make sure you don't need them or see them for a long time. And that's kind of how they
Mm.
approach it. Give you the support you need now, and be very realistic that if I call myself a success if you don't need me anymore, like that sort of mindset. And that really worked. And another thing I'll add for just people like us, like in this generation, like texting is like a really, really easy way to communicate with someone, at least for someone like me. So, like, some of these apps out there, it's very easy to use that sometimes you don't even feel like you're in therapy. It's just getting feelings out, emotions out, and it's a healthy way because on the other side there's this professional who's giving you advice.
Thank you so much for sharing and giving us like insights on this. Let's go into the acceptance slash recovery stage, Colin. Any words you want to share in that one?
Yeah, so I think acceptance is, you had mentioned that in the sadness stage, it's kind of like, you're in the you're in like the rainstorm with the boom box or whatever.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so the acceptance is kind of like the rainbow at the end of the sadness stage. It's like
Oh.
you finally reach a state where you've reflected on everything, you have learned what you needed to learn, you've processed what you needed to process, and you finally reach a place of, I feel at peace
Mm-hmm.
with moving on, I feel at peace with the decision, I feel at peace with this new life I can live without the other person. And I think it's very important to eventually get to this spot of acceptance. Otherwise, you never really truly emotionally move on. And I think there's a
Mm.
couple keys to like getting to acceptance more effectively. To me, it's like there's two things. One is like you need to really understand why the relationship didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Like really be brutally honest. Similar to what we were saying before about honesty. Be brutally honest about the root causes of why the relationship didn't work. Like don't really try to attack what the root cause was and understand that. And the second thing would be really try to understand why you are now better off without this other person. Like try to understand why a life without them will be better for you. And if you can
Mm.
understand these two things, then you will eventually find peace with the situation.
Oh wow. I really, really like this because yeah, it's like it's almost as if you are now saying, okay, I've gone through all of this and I want to give myself closure, right? And it's kind of like the, I guess, closing that chapter of life. And so if you dig through like the real reasons why something wouldn't work or like why you would be better off without someone, that helps you. I think it actually helps you see the light at the end of the tunnel or like the rainbow, right? Because you'd be like, it didn't work out with this person because of this, this, and that. And I'm sure that like I'm going to find someone who can give me, let's say, for example, it didn't work out because the person felt like they didn't have time for you, right? And now you've come to accept and understand that this is why it didn't work. Then you can tell yourself it didn't work because this person really felt like they couldn't give me that time. And I have the faith or like hope that like I am going to meet someone who will give me time. And like I'll be better off with that person than with the person that I was with, because maybe we're always fighting about how this person didn't give me time. I really, really like that. How about you, Vid? Any thoughts on this stage?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Colin said, and something that reminded me about you said this in one of your first two episodes, I think. You said hurt people, and that stuck on to me. And I think moving past all this so you can be in healthy relationship and make sure that I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to be in a loving, healthy relationship, and love is such a beautiful thing. And
Mhm.
because one thing ends, that doesn't mean more beautiful things cannot come your way. Sometimes, like heartbreaks on of your first love, your second love, or like someone that you thought you'll spend your life with at a later age in life, all of that looks different. And I feel like within each person and story, you also learn what is not love. And
Wow. Can you please repeat it for the people at the back?
yes, I actually wrote this a while ago. Um, Within each person and story, you also learn what is not love.
Oh, girl, so
And that's
deep.
also powerful.
Please explain what you mean by that, because I think it's so profound, right? It's so profound. Please explain what you mean.
Okay. So when you get in a relationship, clearly you're not thinking about an end. You build with this person, you grow with this person, and so much that you build like little blocks of like uh, pieces come together. And then when it falls apart, it's really tough. You put a lot of work, a lot of emotions that there, but there's grace and peace in knowing it fell apart because you thought it's love, and you picked up and learned and built all of that based on love. But there are times you also learn that this is not how love is supposed to be, or this
Mm-hmm.
is not how relationships are supposed to be, or a healthy relationship is supposed to be. And sometimes the only way you find out is by going through that, by building the blocks and seeing it collapse. As painful as it is, um, you learn something through each person and story, some good things, some bad things, regardless of whether the relationship is the person you end up being with, or it's just a breakup that happens.
Wow. I think this was a very like solid note to end on, that, yes, in relationships we're looking for love, but sometimes, when a breakup happens, it's really a blessing in disguise. And it could be because, that is not how love is supposed to be. So, wow, what a an amazing and insightful episode. Thank you, first of all, both of you, for being so vulnerable and just being so honest. It's not easy. It's so much easier, right, to talk about the happy feelings, but then it's not easy to come and talk about, like, guys, I was really going through it, and all of that stuff. Thank you both so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle,
Thank you,
for having us
Michelle.
on.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my
this was
gosh.
amazing.
This was so therapeutic. Oh my gosh.
If I could just throw in one final line, it would be, for those listening, it would be, I am a firm believer that no relationship is better than a bad relationship. So the
Woo!
breakup stage is a necessary part of life to live a healthier and happier life, to move on
Oh
Oh,
from
I
my
bad
love that.
relationships.
gosh. I'm giving you a standing ovation right now in my head because I can't clap with this microphone. But oh my gosh, that was really powerful. Thank you for bringing it home, Colin.
That is a mic drop moment.
It really is, right? It is. Both of you were out here just dropping mics while I was holding up a boombox. But yeah, definitely appreciate you guys doing this with me. And to everyone who was listening, thank you so much for listening. If you have any other tips or any other thoughts, please feel free to DM me at Unpacking Love. See you guys next week. Peace.
Ndiwe wandiro ya moyo wangu, ndiwe wandiganganiza fungwa zangu.